The Oran Intergalactic Academy stood as a testament to the pinnacle of cosmic achievement, its walls perpetually shifting between deep indigo and pulsating silver. Built on the foundations of extinct alien cognitive technology, the structure itself was said to be semi-sentient, responding to the collective consciousness of those who walked its hallways. Constructed from a material unknown to Earth science, the Academy's walls rippled with liquid-like movement, occasionally forming intricate patterns that seemed to communicate in a language beyond comprehension. Tracy Stone stared up at the imposing entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs. Unlike the hundreds of other cadets milling around the grand courtyard, she possessed no neural implants, no biological enhancements, no technological advantages. She was entirely, vulnerably human, the only unaugmented student to have been accepted into the Academy in over 50 years. "Today marks your final trial," announced a voice that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "The mind maze awaits." The crowd parted as Professor Threxer glided forward. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, the alien instructor's translucent skin revealed a complex network of bioluminescent veins pulsing with knowledge. 3 pairs of multifaceted eyes surveyed the cadets with clinical detachment. His reputation preceded him, creator of the infamous graduation maze, a test that had ended countless promising careers. "Your performance today determines your placement in the intergalactic fleet," Threxer continued, his voice resonating at a frequency that vibrated within Tracy's chest. "Success grants you elite status among the stars. Failure." His eyes momentarily fixed on Tracy. "Failure returns you to wherever you came from." Tracy swallowed hard. She had traveled 17 light-years from Earth to prove that human ingenuity still had a place in this augmented universe. Back home, neural implants had been banned after the cognitive rebellion of 2789, leaving Earth isolated from the technological revolution sweeping through the galaxy. The scholarship to Oran Academy represented Earth's first tentative step back into interstellar society. Threxor's long, spindly fingers gestured toward a pulsating black portal that had materialized in the center of the courtyard. "The rules are simple. Navigate the maze, find the core, activate the exit protocol. You have 6 hours. "And the restrictions?" asked a crystalline cadet, their silicon-based body refracting light in dazzling patterns. "No active technology, no implant assistance, no quantum tools." Threxer's gaze once again found Tracy. "Only passive bioenhancements permitted." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tracy felt her stomach sink. The restrictions had just eliminated every advantage her fellow cadets possessed, but they still had their enhanced memories, accelerated neural processing, and superior sensory perception. All Tracy had was her unmodified human brain and a profound sense of dread. "How will we remember our paths?" asked another cadet. "An Avon with feathered appendages and an implant-augmented memory capacity 100 times that of an unenhanced human." "That," said Threxer with what might have been a smile on his alien features, "is part of the challenge." As the other cadets began to approach the portal in groups determined by their specialization tracks, Tracy remained rooted to the spot, her mind racing. No technology meant she couldn't use her portable holomapper. No implants meant she had no enhanced recall or spatial awareness. She would be navigating blind, relying solely on her natural abilities. Tracy reached into her pocket and felt the small package she always carried. A relic from Earth. A simple comfort in this alien environment. Chewing gum. The synthetic mint flavor reminded her of home, of summer evenings beneath oak trees, of a simpler existence before she'd set her sights on the stars. A wild idea began to form. "Cadet Stone," Threxer called, his tone betraying a hint of impatience. "The portal awaits." Taking a deep breath, Tracy approached the swirling darkness. As she passed the professor, she could have sworn she detected amusement in his multifaceted eyes. He expected her to fail. They all did. "Good luck, Earthchild," he said, the words carrying a dismissive quality that strengthened Tracy's resolve. She stepped into the void. The transition was disorienting, a moment of absolute nothingness followed by a flood of sensory information. Tracy found herself standing in a corridor with walls that undulated with subtle movement, as if breathing. The material appeared both solid and liquid simultaneously, with a surface that shifted between obsidian black and midnight blue. The air carried a faint electrical charge that made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. The floor beneath her feet hummed with energy, and overhead, panels emitted a soft, ambient glow that cast no shadows. "Okay," Tracy whispered to herself, her voice absorbed by the strange acoustics of the passage. "Think." She reached into her pocket and removed the packet of chewing gum. 20 pieces remained, all she had left from her earth supply. With careful movements, she unwrapped one piece and popped it into her mouth. The familiar mint flavor centered her, calming her racing thoughts. After chewing for a minute, Tracy removed the gum and pressed it against the wall at the entrance point. The small gray blob stood out against the shifting colors of the surface. It wasn't much, but it was a marker, proof that she had been here before. "Simple but effective," she murmured, and began to walk. The corridor stretched forward, eventually splitting into 3 identical passages. Tracy chose the leftmost path, marking her choice with another piece of gum at the junction. She continued this process, chewing and marking as she progressed deeper into the labyrinth, leaving a trail of small gray indicators. After 20 minutes of walking, Tracy froze. Something felt wrong. She turned back, retracing her steps to the previous junction, and gasped. The gum marker she had placed was gone. "No, no, no," she muttered, touching the wall where her marker should have been. A soft chuckle seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, and Tracy realized with a chill that the maze was actively working against her. It was adapting to her strategy, erasing her breadcrumbs. She needed a new approach. Tracy continued forward, this time developing a system. She began to shape the gum into different patterns, dots, lines, arrows, each representing different information. A dot for a dead end, a line for a continued path, an arrow indicating a promising direction. She pressed these more firmly into the walls, embedding them deeper into the strange material. The maze, however, was learning. Some markers remained, while others disappeared. Some changed position slightly, as if the walls had shifted. Tracy began to notice patterns. Markers near junctions vanished more quickly than those in long corridors. The maze was prioritizing critical navigational points. Adapting her strategy, Tracy started placing decoy markers, deliberately misleading signs that would draw the maze's attention while her true indicators remained inconspicuous. She developed a mental map, using the gum markers as confirmation rather than primary navigation. 2 hours into the trial, Tracy encountered her first trap room. The floor panels lit up as she entered, shifting from their ambient glow to a harsh, pulsating red. The door behind her sealed shut with a pneumatic hiss. Pressure sensitive, Tracy realized aloud, noting how the floor panels responded to her weight. She needed to cross the room without triggering whatever mechanism the panels controlled. Carefully, she tested the nearest panel with light pressure from her foot. It depressed slightly, and a corresponding panel on the far wall slid open to reveal a menacing array of what looked like sensory disruptors, devices designed to temporarily overwhelm and disorient non-enhanced neural systems. Tracy stepped back, considering the maze seemed designed to exploit weaknesses, and for an unaugmented human, sensory overload would be particularly effective. She removed another piece of gum, chewed it thoroughly, and then stretched it into a thin strand. Gently, she lowered it onto the nearest floor panel. The weight was insufficient to trigger the mechanism. She added another piece and another, gradually increasing the pressure until the panel depressed and the wall compartment opened, but this time, Tracy was prepared. She quickly identified the pattern. Every third panel was safe. Using her remaining gum, she marked the safe path across the room, carefully making her way to the exit without triggering the disruptors. As the exit door slid open, Tracy couldn't help but smile. The maze might be advanced alien technology, but it still operated on predictable principles. She could work with that. The next section presented a new challenge, a spinning chamber where the walls, floor, and ceiling rotated independently, constantly reorienting the exit points. Tracy felt her stomach lurch as the room began to move, the disorientation threatening to overwhelm her unenhanced vestibular system. She closed her eyes, focusing on her other senses. The sound of air flowing through the exit passages created subtle acoustic differences. Tracy listened carefully, identifying the distinct pitch of the passage that seemed to lead deeper into the maze. Opening her eyes, she marked the correct exit with gum before the room's rotation could confuse her again. The pattern of using gum to mark her path continued to evolve as Tracy encountered new challenges. In a corridor filled with gravitational anomalies, she discovered that her gum markers stretched and contracted in response to the fluctuating forces, inadvertently creating a visual indicator of gravitational strength. In a section of perfect darkness, she found that firmly pressing the gum into the wall left a faint bioluminescent imprint, as if the maze's material was responding to the pressure. 3 hours in, Tracy encountered perhaps the most disorienting challenge yet, a corridor of perfect mirrors, each reflecting the others infinitely. Every surface, including the floor and ceiling, created a bewildering array of reflections that made it impossible to determine the true path forward. Tracy paused, considering. She placed a piece of gum on what seemed to be the floor, then watched as the reflections revealed the actual architecture of the space. The gum appeared in only one reflection angle when placed on a real surface, whereas false reflections showed the gum marker from impossible perspectives. Using this insight, Tracy methodically tested each surface until she identified the true exit hidden among the illusions. As she progressed deeper into the labyrinth, Tracy began to notice something strange about her gum markers. Those she had placed hours ago had changed. Some had shifted color, taking on a faint bluish tinge. Others emitted a subtle scent different from their original mint fragrance. The maze wasn't just erasing her markers, it was studying them, responding to them, perhaps even learning from them. "You're curious," Tracy whispered to the walls, running her fingers along the undulating surface. "You've never encountered this method before." The walls seemed to pulse in response, the material flowing like quicksilver beneath her fingertips. 4 hours into the trial, Tracy began to detect patterns in the maze's layout. Certain architectural elements repeated, though never in exactly the same configuration. The maze wasn't random. It was constructed around fundamental cognitive principles, designed to test problem-solving approaches. Tracy realized that her simple gum marking system had evolved into something more sophisticated. She now used different chewing durations to create markers with varying textures, soft for danger, firm for safe passages. She used teeth impressions to encode directional information and layered multiple pieces to indicate intersection significance. What had begun as a desperate measure had become a complex navigational language between Tracy and the maze. 5 hours in, the corridors began to narrow, the ceiling lowering until Tracy had to crouch to proceed. The air grew thinner, forcing her to take shallow breaths. The maze was increasing the physical strain, testing her endurance as well as her mind. And then, quite suddenly, the passage opened into a vast, spherical chamber. Unlike the rest of the maze, this room remained perfectly still, its walls a deep, midnight black that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. In the center floated a crystalline structure, a geometric shape of impossible complexity that seemed to fold in on itself in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. The core. Tracy approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. As she drew closer to the crystalline object, something changed. Voices began to whisper from every direction, some familiar, others alien, all speaking directly to her deepest insecurities. "You don't belong here," came her mother's voice, tinged with disappointment. "A primitive mind in an advanced universe," whispered Professor Threxer. "The last human experiment, doomed to fail," said a voice Tracy didn't recognize. She recognized this for what it was, a psychological trial, the final defense of the maze. The voices grew louder, more insistent, filling her head with doubts. Images began to flash across the walls. Earth's isolation, Humanity's technological stagnation. Tracy's own failures during her years at the academy. Tracy closed her eyes, pressing her hands against her ears. But the voices continued, now seeming to originate from within her own mind. The psychological assault intensified, threatening to overwhelm her unaugmented consciousness. In that moment of near defeat, Tracy's fingers brushed against the packet of gum in her pocket. The simple touch anchored her, reminding her of the system she had created, the language she had developed with the maze. She focused on that tangible connection, using it to ground herself against the psychological onslaught. "No," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the whispers. "I've earned my place here." Tracy opened her eyes and strode purposefully toward the crystal core. As she approached, the voices diminished, retreating before her confidence. She reached out and placed her hand on the geometric structure. It felt cool to the touch, vibrating with potential energy. The crystal responded to her contact, its complex faces illuminating with intricate patterns that Tracy recognized. They mirrored the patterns she had created with her gum markers throughout the maze. The structure was displaying her journey, her adaptive system, her unique solution. A panel slid open within the crystal, revealing a control interface unlike anything Tracy had seen before. It contained no buttons, no screens, no recognizable input mechanisms, just a depression in the exact shape of a human hand. Tracy placed her hand into the impression. Immediately, the room transformed. The black walls became transparent, revealing a holographic display of the entire maze, every corridor, every chamber, every junction she had navigated. And there, scattered throughout the three-dimensional map, were her gum markers, each one glowing with a distinct signature. The map began to shift, corridors realigning, passages reconnecting. Tracy realized she was seeing the maze's adaptive process, how it had responded to her movements and markers. More importantly, she saw patterns emerging, a hidden logic to the maze's construction that had been invisible from within. With sudden clarity, Tracy understood what was required. The control interface wasn't just displaying the maze, it was offering her control. The final test wasn't simply to reach the core, but to demonstrate mastery over the maze itself. Guided by intuition, Tracy began to move her fingers within the hand depression. The holographic map responded, corridors shifting according to her commands. She worked methodically, aligning passages, creating a direct path from her current position to the entrance where she had first placed a gum marker 6 hours ago. As the final corridor locked into place, a new passage opened in the chamber wall, a straight path illuminated by soft blue light. The exit protocol had been activated. Tracy had solved the impossible maze. She withdrew her hand from the crystal, which dimmed momentarily before pulsing with renewed energy. The voices returned, but different now, curious, respectful, almost admiring. "Unexpected solution," they whispered as Tracy walked toward the exit. "Creative adaptation, human ingenuity." Tracy smiled, running her fingers along the wall one last time. "Thanks for the challenge," she said, and stepped through the exit. She emerged into a vast amphitheater under an open night sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. The assembled faculty and successful cadets turned toward her in unison, a murmur of surprise rippling through the crowd. At the center of the stage stood Professor Threxer, his multifaceted eyes widening at her appearance. "Cadet Stone," he announced, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. "You have completed the trial." Tracy approached, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look after 6 hours in the maze. Her uniform was smudged with residue from the walls, her hair clinging to her forehead with perspiration. Yet she walked with confidence, her head held high. "The maze was educational," she said, unable to suppress a small smile. "Indeed." Threxer gestured toward a large display hovering above the stage. It showed a replay of Tracy's journey through the labyrinth, focusing on her unique marking system. "You employed a most unusual methodology. Simple tools, complex application." Tracy replied, "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective." Threxor's features arranged themselves into what Tracy had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. The maze adapts to challenge each candidate according to their capabilities. For enhanced individuals, it creates computational complexities beyond their augmentations. For you, he paused. For you, it could only rely on disorientation and psychological pressure, which proved insufficient. Tracy stated simply, "Yes." Threxor extended a long-fingered hand, presenting a small crystalline emblem, the seal of the Orin Intergalactic Academy. "You have earned this, Cadet Stone, or rather, Graduate Stone." Tracy accepted the emblem, feeling its weight in her palm, heavier than it looked, thrumming with the same energy that permeated the Academy itself. "The maze has never encountered your particular approach before," Threxor continued. "It has expressed interest in further studying your methodology." There was a note of something almost like amusement in his voice. "We would like to offer you a position on the maze development team. Your perspective could prove valuable in evolving the trial for future candidates." Tracy looked out at the assembled graduates, beings from across the galaxy, each enhanced with the latest technology, each representing the pinnacle of their respective species' evolution. And then there was her, completely human, relying on chewing gum and observation. "I'm honored by the offer," she said carefully, "but I think my place is back on Earth." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. No one refused positions at the Academy. "You would decline advancement?" Threxor asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Tracy nodded. "I came here to prove something. That human ingenuity still has a place in this universe. That creativity and adaptability can sometimes outperform technological solutions." She held up the Academy seal. "This is proof, and that proof belongs on Earth, where it can inspire others." Threxor studied her for a long moment, his multiple eyes blinking in an asynchronous pattern that indicated deep thought. "You continue to surprise, Graduate Stone," he finally said. "The qualities you demonstrated today, resourcefulness, adaptability, psychological resilience, these are rare even among enhanced beings, perhaps especially among enhanced beings." He gestured toward the night sky, where Earth's sun was just a distant point of light. "Your world has chosen a different path. Today, you have demonstrated its potential value." Tracy felt a swell of pride. She had come to the Academy as an experiment, Earth's tentative step back into galactic society. She would return as living proof that humanity's path, however divergent from the rest of the galaxy, had merit. "Before you depart," Threxor said, "the maze has a final communication for you." The display above the stage shifted, the imagery of Tracy's journey through the labyrinth rearranging itself into patterns reminiscent of her gum markers. They flowed and combined, eventually forming a simple message in human English. "Ingenuity transcends technology." Tracy smiled. "Tell the maze I look forward to seeing how it evolves." "It will be watching for you among the stars, Graduate Stone," Threxor replied. 3 weeks later, Tracy stood on the observation deck of the transport vessel that would return her to Earth. Orin Academy diminished in the viewport as the ship prepared for its jump to hyperspace. The living structure seemed to pulse in farewell, its color-shifting walls rippling in patterns that Tracy now recognized as a form of communication. She reached into her pocket and removed her last piece of chewing gum, a final souvenir from her journey through the impossible maze. As she unwrapped it, she noticed something strange. The formerly gray gum now shimmered with faint iridescence, and when she cautiously sniffed it, the scent had changed from mint to something indescribable, reminiscent of star clusters and cosmic phenomena. The maze had left its mark on her simple tool, just as she had left her mark on the maze. Tracy smiled and placed the transformed gum back in its wrapper, tucking it safely away. She would preserve it as a reminder, not just of her achievement, but of the limitless potential that existed in the space between human creativity and advanced technology. As the ship's engines engaged and the stars blurred into streaming lines of light, Tracy thought about what awaited her on Earth. She would bring back not just the Academy seal and her graduation credentials, but a new perspective on humanity's place in the cosmos. In a universe racing toward ever greater technological enhancement, she had proven that the unaugmented human mind, with all its messy creativity and intuitive leaps, still had something unique to offer. Not despite its limitations, but perhaps because of them. The hyperspace jump enveloped the ship, and Tracy Stone, the first unaugmented human graduate of Orin Intergalactic Academy, headed home, carrying proof that sometimes the simplest solutions could solve the most complex problems. And somewhere behind her, an impossible maze continued to adapt, incorporating elements of human ingenuity into its evolving design. Preparing for the next wave of cadets who would attempt to unravel its mysteries, each in their own unique way.